This is one of the most complex and, frankly, unresolved stories of our time. It's a case that's really defined not by the answers it provides, but by all the troubling questions that still linger. So we're going to take a hard look at the official record, what is publicly known about the life and the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
It all comes down to this single, stark event. An event that didn't actually end the story. Instead, it kind of locked it in place, forever suspended, and ensuring that the full truth, well, it might never come out. So let's start with Section 1, the death in cell 9M. To understand the wider mystery here, we absolutely have to begin with that central event, the documented facts that surround his death, all according to the official record.
The ruling from the New York City medical examiner was, on the surface, very clear. The official cause of death was suicide by hanging, and that's the conclusion that was entered into the public record. But the circumstances surrounding that ruling, they immediately raised some very serious questions. You see, official investigations would later document a whole series of systemic failures. According to those reports, the 2 guards assigned to his unit were actually asleep for hours and later falsified records. Key security cameras right outside his cell, they malfunctioned. His cellmate had been moved just hours before he was found. And critically, Epstein had recently been taken off suicide watch, even though there was an earlier incident that left him with injuries to his neck. The sheer number of things that went wrong led to an unavoidable question. How on earth did one of the nation's most high-profile inmates end up in this situation? To even begin to answer that, we have to rewind a bit and understand who Jeffrey Epstein was before he was a prisoner.
Section 2, a man of mystery. Before he was an inmate, Epstein was a man really defined by 2 things: an immense, almost unimaginable amount of wealth, and a web of unparalleled power and influence. Publicly, he was known as a financier, someone who managed money for the ultra-rich. But there was always this footnote to his career. Despite a lavish lifestyle, we're talking private jets, mansions all over the world, the specific sources of his vast fortune, well, according to public records, there remained largely a mystery.
What wasn't a mystery, though, was his influence. He spent decades, meticulously, carefully, building a global network of some of the world's most powerful and prominent people.
And these documented associates, they really span the globe. You look at public records, at photographs, at flight logs, and you see connections to presidents and prime ministers, to international royalty, Wall Street billionaires, and even Nobel Prize-winning scientists.
Section 3, the federal charges. So what brought this incredibly powerful man to a federal jail cell? Well, in the summer of 2019, the case that had been building for years finally broke wide open.
Federal prosecutors in New York unsealed a truly damning indictment. The charges were sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. The allegations spanned years and involved dozens upon dozens of victims. He was deemed a major flight risk, so a judge ordered him held without bail to await his trial.
Section 4, a system under scrutiny. Of course, as we now know, that trial never happened. His death ignited a firestorm, and that turned the spotlight directly onto the official fallout within the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the justice system itself. The official fallout was pretty swift. The Department of Justice launched its own internal investigations. The 2 guards who were on duty were charged, although they later reached a deal with prosecutors. The prison's warden was removed from his job. But beyond these official actions, the event triggered just this massive wave of public outrage and demands for answers that, for a lot of people, have still never come.
Section 5, the unsealed files. Now, while Epstein's death closed the criminal case against him, a whole new chapter began to unfold in the civil courts, and this led to a kind of posthumous reckoning.
Through these long-running civil lawsuits that were brought by his victims, the courts began the slow, deliberate process of unsealing thousands of pages of confidential documents, and that started to shed new light on his whole operation.
And these materials that were released, they provided a really raw, unfiltered look into his world. I mean, they included detailed flight logs from his private jets, his personal calendars filled with all these scheduled meetings, and most importantly, they contained depositions and testimonies from his accusers, giving a public voice to their stories, many for the very first time.
Okay, at this point, it is absolutely essential to make a critical clarification.
As legal experts have stressed over and over, being named in these documents or appearing in a photo does not equal guilt. It is not evidence of being complicit in any crime. It is simply a record of an association. And that bedrock principle of innocent until proven guilty remains paramount.
Section 6. Lingering questions. And all of this brings us right back to the central issue of this entire case, the lack of any legal conclusion and what that means for everyone involved. For the victims, it simply meant justice was denied.
The legacy of this case is really defined by what didn't happen. There was no criminal trial. The evidence that prosecutors had gathered was never tested under cross-examination in a court of law. And because there was no trial, Jeffrey Epstein never had to answer for the allegations against him, under oath. There was no testimony from the accused.
And maybe most profoundly, the victims, the dozens of women who came forward, they were denied the chance to face him in a criminal courtroom. The final chapter of their long pursuit of justice, it was just never written.
So this is the undeniable reality of the case. Jeffrey Epstein died in jail, but the questions, they remain very much alive. Questions about his crimes, about his network, and about his death in federal custody. And for now, they remain unanswered.